chairperson of the committee. I represent equine. Someone else want to introduce themselves?
I'm Garth Russell. I represent animal control.
I'm Bonnie Martinolich. I represent the lawyer with experience in animal welfare laws.
I'm Jessica Matulos. I'm the veterinarian.
I'm Katie Lisnick, representing licensed animal shelters.
Great. I think that's who we've got for members. Is that correct? Okay, yeah. And then I can just introduce staff. Reggie Manter, one of our newest district humane agent, has graciously agreed to facilitate this meeting. So thank you, Reggie, for running the Teams meeting. And let's see if any other staff. No, I'm not seeing anybody else. And then I'm Ann Gibbs, and I'm the division director for Animal and Plant Health. The animal welfare program falls within our division, and I am now sort of interim director for animal welfare as we proceed along to fill positions, et cetera. So welcome everybody, and I think we'll get started with, so let's turn it back to Casey.
Okay. So first thing on our agenda is the staffing changes in the animal welfare program.
So I'll start that off. So as I mentioned, Liam left about 10 days ago. No, sorry, it was early April. So we've been working to make, adjustments in the interim and the transition. But I wanted to share that we are in the process of working on a job announcement for the animal welfare program director. I have sent that over to our human resource folks and hoping that will be posted within the next week or so. We will be doing a national search for that position. I'll have that position open for about a month. Normally state jobs are open for a couple of weeks, but we will expand that, and then we will go along, work from there as we see what we get for candidates. So I just wanted to keep you up with that situation. District humane agents positions, we recently filled the Mid-Coast position with Reggie Manter, who's on this call. So great to have Reggie here. And then we have advertised for the York Cumberland position, and that actually closes today. So we'll see what candidates we got for that position, and then we'll be moving forward with setting up interviews and going from there. And then a new position that we are working on developing the job description, et cetera, for is a field supervisor for the agents. I've always thought it would be helpful to have a connection in the field, or somebody who was supervising or was kind of a liaison with the director and a direct sort of contact with the field. So that position is, again, going through the HR process to establish the position. And they will be sort of the point of contact for the director with field activities and work to continue to shore up partnerships in the field, and mainly working with, obviously, complaint cases and helping the district humane agents and any other activities that occur there. So that's a new position that we'll be working on. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments, but that's where we're at this point. Great.
Awesome. Next, we had the animal health update, but I don't see Dr. Fisk in here yet.
Yeah, okay. So we can just...
We can move on past that.
Yeah.
Now. After that, we have the animal welfare annual report to the legislature.
Yeah, and I don't know what, I think everybody got a copy of that. I don't know if folks had anything specific. I just thought it was important to bring it to your attention. I think you were all sent a copy. It was, it's something that we do annually. I think you all know, we're required to report to the legislature about activities in the program. And so this was presented and sent over to the legislature a little bit later this year, but sort of the end of March. So just wanted you to have this document, and if anybody had any particular questions, or Casey, I don't know what would be helpful to share with folks. I just wanted to make sure people were aware of it more than anything. And it is just a snapshot in time. So remember, it's the data from 2021. So I don't know how you want to, if anybody had any particular questions or. Nope. Garth's got it all figured out.
No, it looks pretty straightforward. It's the same thing we saw every year. So
Yeah.
Nothing surprising.
Yeah, no, and I think
No.
the one thing I'll point out, which I think is not a surprise to folks, if you look at the first bit, you know, our expenses were quite high in 2021, exceeding our revenues. And I think the issue with that was we did have a lot of expenses related to COVID and cases and so forth. Things just, you know, dragged on a little longer and were more expense for the department. So that's one explanation for some of the issues. But all right. Well, if folks don't have any questions.
Yeah,
Good.
seemed pretty straightforward to me too. Next we have the legislation update. Next we have the
Yes.
legislation update.
So I'll start with, I think you all know, with LD 1828, which was the an act to contract for administration of DACF's low-cost spay and neuter program. That was passed and signed by the governor at the end of March, March 29th. So it's now public law 523, if anybody wants to see the exact wording. And so we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the request for proposals for the third party administration of what we call the Help Fix Me program needs to be worked on by August 1st of 2022. So those are the main details of that piece of legislation. LD 1744, which is an act to increase the funding for animal welfare. There was a new amendment presented at sort of last minute, a couple of days ago, I would say, was voted on, and basically there were no increases in the fees for the feed licenses, but they changed the distribution of the funds to 80% to go to animal welfare and 20% to go to quality assurance. So that's all general fund money. That did pass. It was on the docket yesterday. It passed, but now it's gone into the neverland of the appropriations table. So we'll see what happens. And I just did get a read this morning. Apparently there are, what is it? There's $17 million, or maybe I have that wrong, but there are $1 billion worth of requests on the appropriations table that they'll have to sort out, presumably by today is when they were hoping to adjourn. So we'll see what happens, but keep your fingers crossed that we might come out with this one, but that's where we're at. So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
And then LD 1828. Do we have an update on that?
Yeah. Sorry, which one? I just did that one. Sorry, I did it ahead of time.
That's the act to contract for administration of the low
Yeah,
cost.
I did them out of order. Sorry, just because that one was completed. So yeah, I did bring that up.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's-
sorry.
Sorry. No, that's fine. I threw you a curveball. I didn't mean to do that, but I just thought that was one that we know exactly the fate of it essentially. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm running off like 3 hours this.
Yes, I know. It's fine.
Okay, next we have the Help Fix Me program. Let's review the rules of the program and then get our input for the process going.
So, yeah, Casey, I apologize. That was one thing I wanted to share. Well, actually, I guess I could share my screen. If that would be helpful to actually, would folks like to be able to see the rule? Would that be helpful? Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be useful.
Give me a 2 seconds and I will get that up. Low, sorry. Oh, come on. Sorry. Hmm. All right. Sorry. Should work. Not sure why this isn't working. See if this one. Reggie, if I sent you, I'm not sure why this isn't working. Can I not share?
You should be allowed to share. And you're selecting share in the top menu,
Yeah, I had it.
and it'll say share content, and typically
I
then
know,
you're
and
gonna-
now I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it.
and then you can pick a screen depending on what you
Yeah,
have.
I've got it. Oops.
Yep.
Can you see it now? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So these are the rules for the Help Fix Me program. Obviously just basically definitions. Pretty self-explanatory, I think. Just stop me if anybody has any particular questions. Licensed animal shelters, the definition of an owner. I think that plays in a fair amount to the current rules. Definition of the program. Stray animal, etc. So here's the eligibility requirements. Basically an adult resident of the state of Maine. The spay or neuter needs to be done by a veterinarian. We need to make a determination of the co-payment annually, and just the requirement for the participants, 133% of the federal poverty level. So we have to be a way to have a method to prove that requirement.
What's the current copay right now?
I think it's $10. Sorry, I don't know that I have all the. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it's $10.
And this is Bonnie. May I impose on you to also email this around? It's helpful to.
Sure. Yeah, no,
see
I
it.
meant to, I was gonna put it in the chat. I'm sorry, but yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Happy to do that. Do you want that now?
I don't mind it, but I don't want to stop the meeting for it. So I'm happy for the meeting to
Okay.
get it later.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go through and then I'll send it. I can send it right away. It's not that, won't be that difficult to do.
Okay.
So remember that these are the rules currently, and so I think just to let people know what we've got, and then this may change as the process with the as we go through the process of the RFP, but it gives you an idea of what's what. Vet participation, and then just reimbursement of the fees. And then we've got certain things that we're willing to cover with the fees, and I think we may be even doing a few other things, additional things that seem to be helpful that we got from feedback from the veterinarians. So the program tries to be somewhat nimble to meet the needs. And so this is basically what the department, as far as administering the program involves. We issue the vouchers. We help to procure, veterinarian participation and maintain lists of participating veterinarians so we can share that with our clientele. And then we must determine the eligibility and notify vets of the co-payment, collect the co-pays, and then reimburse veterinarians. And then here's some of the wording. As I think you all know, in the statute, we always had the ability to contract with a third party or an organization, and this just sort of affirms what some of the processes would have to occur. And that word, then that has just been changed in LD 1828, which is now Public Law 523, that requires the department to contract out. And then there's some performance measures, and then distribution of funds. And that was just to give the department some idea of how to apportion the funds depending on the need. And as you all know, that need can change depending on, obviously it was all focused on cats and dogs, but what proportion of the funding should go to which different species or certain breeds, et cetera. And that's probably something that needs to be, looked at, but right now, yeah, no more than 10% of the program's fund can be spent on a species that is not overpopulated. So at this point, I think the program has been putting most of the focus on cats and less on dogs, because that was an assessment that was made. But that obviously that can change.
How do they come to the definition of overpopulated?
Good question. I think it has to do with the survey that is conducted each year to get information. That's just to be honest with you, Casey, I'm not sure, but I think it's the survey that's conducted each year that's included in the annual report.
Okay.
And then the funding is, what is provided in the in the budget and is put into a non-lapsing account, basically. And the funding, is sort of comes in when it's available. So it doesn't all come in one lump sum. It comes in as folks are licensing and the licenses are getting processed, et cetera. So, all right. So I'm going to stop. Unless anybody has any particular question, I'll be happy to send this out to folks. So I'm going to stop presenting.
So are we going to be going over this in more detail later, just because?
Yeah, I wasn't sure, Casey, I wasn't sure what you wanted to do. What I was going to suggest was that, right, Garth, to your point, what I thought was that I could send you guys the rule. I just wanted to bring it up on this call. I don't know that we need to have, you all, wanted to have input in the process. And I think that would be, I was hoping to have a discussion on that at the next meeting where we could talk about concrete ideas about what you wanted to include in the RFP. But I just sort of wanted to introduce it at this meeting. That was my intention, but Casey, I don't know if you had something else in mind.
Yeah, I also wanted to get input from Dr. Matulis and others about their experience with the program so we could try to troubleshoot some problems, just to get thinking about it. Katie?
I know some of the animal control officers in some of the other towns had a hard time with the program trying to get feral cats and larger colonies under control, or trying to get vouchers for them. So I'm sure that they would have some input. I'd have to go back and ask again what their issues were, because I don't use it too much.
Right.
Because I have other
Garth,
resources.
there was an allowance in the law. There was a change in the law that broadens the ability to spay and neuter feral cats, so it makes it a little bit easier. So that may address a little bit of the concern that your constituents had. But yeah, no, that's definitely been an issue that folks have brought up in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Katie?
I think Katie.
Yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question regarding the current rules and the kind of the scope of the RFP process. Are we, I mean, I believe, and I could be wrong, but if we wanted to make some proposed changes to the scope of the rules, then that would still have to go through formal rulemaking process, right? That couldn't be addressed through the RFP process.
Yeah, but you bring up a good question. And if we're putting together an RFP, we're required in law to put together an RFP to run this program. I don't know that it has to revert back to what we already have in rule, but I need to verify that, because we're putting together a document that says this is how this program is going to be run. I don't think it has to refer back to the rules were for our purpose of running the program, when it's here in the department. But as far as if we're contracting it out, I think whatever is in the RFP, that ends up being a contract, and it says, you're supposed to do this, this, and this. So I think the requirements that are set in rule are for us if we have it in the department. But as far as the RFP is concerned, I think we would have all those criteria in the RFP, and then they would be ultimately in a contract. So yeah, okay. I don't think it has to. But you're correct. If we were going to make changes to the rules, right, it would have to go through rulemaking. But I can double check, but I think that the RFP and the contract is what we would be going by at that point.
Would be the governing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Great.
I did see a notice that the Help Fix Me fund has been exhausted. So when does that get topped up again?
Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. That was on my list. Well, it gets topped up as the money comes in. So there's no big, chunk of change that we're waiting for necessarily. I think sorry, I've got too many papers here. I have that memo somewhere. I think what we, here it is. So I think in the memo that I put out, that I think you all got a copy of, you know, we're anticipating receiving another about $40,000 from now until July 1st. And as I said, it's sort of as the funding comes in and gets processed, you know, these are for licenses and they have to be processed through another program actually within the Bureau. So as we get funding, we will assess when we can, you know, open the program up. But we've got to a point where we've got a lot of outstanding vouchers, and we need to make sure we have enough money to pay for those. So we don't want to, you know, overstep our finances. So the intention we have is to be checking on a regular basis to see, you know, how we're doing, and with the existing, you know, vouchers coming in for repayment, and then when we have enough to be able to actually issue new vouchers and so forth. So we're keeping an eye on that as best we can. But we thought, you know, we made an allowance so that we could at least get clinics in place for May of this year, and then we'll continue to look. So I can't give you a very solid answer. It's just that we'll be keeping an eye on the funding. But as I said in the memo, it's been incredibly popular. You know, we've released a lot of vouchers this year, and the increase to the veterinarians means that we have less funding to pay for things. I mean, that was well needed, but it just decreases the number of so that's where we're at this point.
Going back to dealing with the program, Dr. Matulis, I know you do a lot of the Help Fix Me spays and neuters. Do you have any input on how it's been dealing with them?
So at our clinic anyway, we do a lot of them, as I have said before. And actually, we have a very large clinic coming up that we're supposed to be doing. So hopefully there is some sort of financial reimbursement there. But yeah, so I think the turnaround time for us receiving payment for the Help Fix Me's has been pretty quick, from what I've been told. We've definitely gotten a decent influx of the Help Fix Me vouchers in this past year since Liam did that survey. I guess my biggest question/concern for this group, which I talked to Liam a little bit about our first meeting, is that I don't know those of you who actually read the survey from the veterinarians, but I was kind of shocked and a little disappointed about the response from some of the veterinarians and why they don't do the Help Fix Me. I definitely think there's not as much education in the veterinarians of how beneficial the program is for the general population, like our community as a whole. And so I kind of was interested, and I don't know how we would go about this, but kind of doing a little bit more education to the veterinarians as far as, you know, why this program is so important and how even just if they did a few a year could make a huge difference for our community as a whole. So that was kind of something I would really like to see if we could get involved in doing. I don't know how this committee would do that, but I mean, a lot of those comments from the veterinarians were honestly quite hostile, and I was surprised. I know obviously no one wants to work for free. I get that. But at the same time, you know, as human beings, we're all supposed to do some version of community service to kind of better our community as a whole. So I think it's kind of important to educating them the importance of that, and how if we all work together as veterinarians in this state, there's a lot of us. And even if we all did a little bit, you know, a year, made a pact to do, you know, even if it's like 20 to 30 a year or something like that, just, you know, I think that would make a huge difference in our community as a whole, and maybe spread out the expenses of the Help Fix Me program so that we're not getting a massive influx of, like, again, we're supposed to do a Help Fix Me program here soon at our own clinic, and we're supposed to do like 60 cats. I think that was the projection anyway. So, kind of divvying that out through other clinics, over the year. So the balances of the funds are kind of spread out over the year versus just a massive influx, spring and fall, that sort of thing. So I think that's something, like I said, if we could work on, that would be great, just to kind of help educate veterinarians and make them a little bit more involved in the process. And maybe they would be less hostile and maybe more willing to actually participate in the program. Because, there's a lot of us in the state, and I think we could make a huge difference. So.
Jessica, that's such an interesting point. This is Bonnie, because I wonder what effect that these large veterinary corporations are coming in and buying up practices, and what effect that might have on veterinarians' practices to participate in the spay and neuter program.
That is a great question. And I think it does have a huge impact because corporate is very, Casey, I know you could probably speak more on the corporate section there, but I'm sure they're more economic oriented, if you will, as far as, costs and benefits situation. So yeah, that probably is a huge factor for some of these guys. I know some of the comments were from people, like in Fort Kent area, people who are just like, out in the boonies who, are just doing their best to stay afloat with what they have. And so adding one more thing that they have to do is just exhausting for them. But yeah, I agree with you. The corporate thing is going to be a little bit of a struggle as far as what are they willing to do. But even corporate, you'd think there's some sort of niche there as far as being involved in their community and trying to help promote their business a little bit through the community situation. So.
Actually, a few years ago, I had reached out to the CEO of Rare Breed, or the COO, one of the two. And they were interested in working with the Help Fix Me program, but then AWOC stopped meeting. So I lost the ability to try to affect the program in ways that would probably help them, encourage them to get onto the program more. But they did seem interested, so I think some of the corporations are interested. Probably depends on who. Rare Breed's main based, so they're more likely to participate, I think. I don't know about VetCore and some of the other ones.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no.
So, Jessica, I had a question for you because you brought up something that I've thought a lot about is whether there should be a time of year that we're focusing the vouchers or not, because part of the angst we had when writing this memo is it's spring and this is when, we should be, and I understand that, and it was really difficult for us, but we're sort of running out of money. And I think we've had some discussions internally about, should we sort of be positioning when we release vouchers at certain times of the year, and maybe, have some periods when we're not, just to make sure that we have enough funding to cover those times when I think it's more important. And so I guess I'd love your thoughts on that too.
So from a veterinary standpoint, I know spring and summer are really busy for a general practitioner. So, we have a lot of our regular clients coming in for their annual flea and tick and heartworm preventative, even though they should be doing it all year long. A lot of them coming in for their spring vaccines. I know a lot of the equine and bovine people are starting to get more in their spring shots and stuff. So this time of year is really hard for a general practitioner to do, I don't want to say pro bono work, but kind of essentially is what Help Fix Me is to a lot of the general practitioners. So taking that time away from paying clients who are spending, $500 on their dog's annual visit, I think it'd be a hard one to sell for spring and summer. I think that's the busiest time of year for most veterinarians. I think fall and winter would probably be a better time if we were going to consolidate the income, would be around there, because that's when, a lot of that preventative care starts to die down. We're just seeing usually more sick patients than anything. So I definitely think that would be a good one for the barn cats and, doing that kind of preventive care for those guys in that time frame, because they tend to come more out of the woodwork than spring and summer. You don't see them because they're out hunting or whatever they're doing, versus winter and fall they're trying to come back into the barn and be a little bit more catchable, if you will. So I think it'd probably be a better time to work on that. So.
No, that's helpful. That's helpful information. Thanks.
Katie might be able to add to this as well, but
Sure.
from what I remember, spring is our kitten season. So at that point, they're already born, and winter and fall would be a good time to concentrate on that as well before it happens. I don't know, but I haven't been in the shelter in 15 years, so maybe it's changed since then.
Hasn't changed all that much. Still certainly do see the peak starting in spring, although I think each year it's later and later. It's more of a trickle right now. We've had pregnant cats since January and kittens in foster care, but summer, fall are the busiest times in the shelters. So you don't see as many kittens flooding in spring, but by the summer and fall, it's really crazy. I agree that winter, is a good time. My only concern with kind of, front loading or keeping a lot of the vouchers for a single or a shorter period of time is that we also do have challenges with just veterinary capacity, enough veterinarians to do the procedures, and trying to squeeze them into a shorter time frame. You might find a lot more folks getting frustrated because they can't find a clinic to take the voucher. I know we, at Greater Androscoggin, we're doing spay neuters throughout the year now, now that we have a shelter veterinarian. And we're having to put people on a wait list because we just can't get through the surgeries fast enough. So I'd hate to see them all kind of preloaded to the winter, but then not enough veterinary capacity to be able to even get through the vouchers that have been issued. So it's certainly a challenge.
Yeah. No, that's all fine. I'm just trying to figure out so we don't run out, because I think that's inevitable, and I think it'll be inevitable, frankly, for a third-party contractor. I don't think this is going to go away just because it's the state running the program. So I think it's a smart conversation to have that makes some sense. So thanks for that input. That's helpful.
I mean, I've always thought the vouchers is the hard part of the program. Anyways, all these issues coming up with it. The backlog of vouchers coming in and then causing a negative amount in the account, it almost makes more sense if we could change it to a grant program. And then this clinic has X amount of money, this clinic has X amount of money, this clinic has X amount of money. They know they're getting paid. They just have to agree to do so many animals. It could make it easier for someone running the program, and it would get rid of this headache with the vouchers that it goes into the red and then goes into the black and goes into the red and goes into the black. I know that's a thought to put out there.
Yeah, we'll have to, the other piece that I wanted to emphasize is we don't get a chunk of money that we can just give to somebody at a certain time. That's the piece that we don't have control over that, unless, and nobody would find this very popular, but unless we sort of stop the program for a year, caught up with the money, and then you could have a chunk of money each year, but that's not going to be popular. So it's just the nature of the way we get these different pots of money. They come in at different times of the year. So that's a difficult thing for us to try to figure out how to have enough to sort of set it up. But yeah, no, those are all good suggestions. And Casey, were you talking about a grant program that would go specifically to veterinarians to administer this, or having a third party group then work with the veterinarians and,
I think going right to the clinics and right to the spay and neuter shelters. Because you could divvy it up quarterly that way too, to go with the flow of money a little easier. I think if anyone has any other ideas on that, speak up, because.
No, I agree. I think it would also encourage veterinarians who don't normally do the help fix me's to do it, because they know that they're getting paid. They just have to use that money directly for that reason. So it would be a little bit more paperwork for them as far as filling out the vouchers and stuff. And I think that's something Liam did mention a while ago about doing. you know, to try to kind of increase the support from veterinarians in the state as far as doing those health fix me's. But I agree with you, Am, that's definitely going to be difficult, you know, unless you have, you know, 20 grand to give, you know, whatever to each practice. It's kind of one of those, and you know, you'd have to have a timeline, like they have to use it within that calendar year versus, you know, 6 months, like, you know, and then that could get a little tricky for sure. I see that.
No, it's all good suggestions, and we'll just have to see what the limitation is on the law as far as what we're allowed, how that contract can do it. It didn't have anything really specific. It said sort of third party, so I think there's a fair amount of flexibility, but all those things are definitely worth, you know, looking at and seeing if there's a way to administer something. I don't know if we have to send it to one entity. That's the only concern I have. It may have to go. I know this won't be popular, but maybe it goes to the main medical association or something. I don't know, but we can look at, those are all good conversations. I'm sure, you know, there'll be more to ponder, but yeah, it's a brave new world, but you're all bringing up issues that we've all felt were, you know, problematic and difficult with managing this. So thanks. So the only thing I just have about process. So like I said, I'd like to have more conversation at our next meeting. And then ultimately we in the department sort of would take, you know, your input and use your input. And then we're the ones who have to put the RFP together and go through the process and go through our procurement and so forth and so on. But we would take the comments that you made and sort of draft some of the, you know, requirements for the contract, essentially, which is the meat of any RFP that anybody's interested. Most of an RFP is just boilerplate things that we have to have in there, but that's the bulk of the important part of what those criteria are. So we will definitely have more conversation about that. And also I want to share too that, so once we put an RFP together, you know, which is basically a request for proposals, then we have a review process, obviously, to choose, you know, which proposal meets our needs. And we have an opportunity to have a review panel, and we can have outside folks in the review panel. So that's another way to get input from AWAC, et cetera. So I think putting together the information that would go into the RFP and then actually reviewing the proposals, we would probably reach out and have some outside folks help with that too. So, okay. Hey, Rachel, I think Rachel is on.
Yeah, I see her name on there.
Do you want to give us a little update? Thank you.
Sure. So Anne had requested that I pop onto your meeting, and thank you for the invitation, to give you guys an update about the highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak here in Maine and the rest of the United States. So I don't know, I'll kind of give a high level overview, and then if you have questions, maybe I can answer them if that works out for everyone. In most of what I'm going to talk about refers to domestic poultry, which is what the animal health team within the Department of Ag is tasked with managing and mitigating. So HPAI originally, I can back up and say, is it has been brought to Maine and elsewhere in the country by wildlife, wild waterfowl, and who carry avian influenza asymptomatically every year, basically. And we do monitor and do surveillance through our wildlife partners here in Maine and across the United States. So both federal and state partners do monitor for that. So we knew that there was an uptick in various strains of avian influenza circulating in our watersheds since last fall. So we did do some sort of preemptive messaging, and lo and behold, in late February, on February 23rd, here in Maine, we did have our first detection of the highly pathogenic avian influenza. We've since gone on to have 12 other flocks be affected. In Maine, the last flock that was affected was humanely euthanized 2 weeks ago today. So we have not had a case that we have sampled and detected HPAI in about 2 weeks, which is great. We are enjoying the lull, if you will, and doing our best to sort of get all of the other things that were put on hold wrapped up. There are, as of yesterday afternoon, 29 states total, including Maine, that have been affected. So a lot of the Midwestern states have been really severely impacted. So it gets a little confusing as to commercial versus non-commercial facilities. So I'm not going to go into it unless you want the whole breakdown. But a lot of the facilities that have been impacted have been commercial poultry facilities. Which usually results. So if we get a detection of avian influenza, the preference from the USDA, so this is a foreign animal disease, so it is managed on a federal level, but here in Maine, it's really state folks and elsewhere in the country that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. USDA has certainly been instrumental in assisting Maine with our response, but oftentimes we're the ones that are collecting samples and with help going out and humanely euthanizing a flock if it's detected in the flock. So that's our mitigation step. So again, we're trying to get the virus off of the landscape as much as possible. So our response to a detection that is laboratory confirmed is to humanely euthanize or depopulate the entire flock. And I can talk more about that if you guys want. But that's sort of where we're at right now. But if we do have a detection, we are instructed to depopulate or humanely euthanize ideally within 24 hours and certainly no longer than 48 hours. So it's usually a pretty quick moving thing. Once the ball gets rolling, it's sort of a just-in-time response. So I think maybe I'll stop talking and see if everyone has questions.
So Rachel, I know they were talking about, and I know this is very much behind the ball, but a vaccine for these larger poultry farms. Is that something that's been more definitive, or they just feel like they're behind the ball at this point, or?
So there's no vaccine that is labeled for use in the United States. It is a federally regulated thing, just like most human and animal vaccines are FDA regulated here in the US. There's not one that's currently labeled for use and approved. So that would be a federal approval process. Implementing a vaccination strategy in the US would have a pretty significant impact with our trade partners. And so that using vaccination for prevention of a foreign animal disease basically signals to other countries that we consider this no longer a foreign animal disease, but something that's endemic that we need to work and manage with prevention rather than mitigation steps such as depopulation. So the way that it made the most sense to me as it was explained was that we would have to balance the effects of our U.S. poultry population and our ability to respond to the current outbreak with the losses in trade partners that we would likely experience if we implemented vaccination rather than depopulation. So sounds so political and government-like, so I apologize.
Has that come up very much in the backyard flock setting where they're not moving around, there's not big groups, and hopefully not a lot of wildlife in there?
So our backyard flock, so each and every flock that we have detected here in Maine has wildlife, and that seems to be the common denominator, is that there's been some sort of connection with wild waterfowl, whether it's someone bringing it in on their shoes, or more than likely. We have a lot of backyard mixed flocks in Maine, so it's chickens, guineas, ducks, geese, and the ducks and the geese go down to the pond, mix and mingle with the wild waterfowl, and then bring it back right into the coop. So that's generally been the story with our flocks that have been affected here in Maine. They're still doing the epidemiology work to see how it's getting into our, sort of the high level, large poultry production facilities, because a lot of those facilities are shower in, shower out. Staff are not technically allowed to have birds. There's a lot of restrictions on that stuff, and they have pretty good biosecurity. And so that's sort of an ongoing, investigation as how it's getting in. There's some preliminary stuff, but nothing that anyone's going to want to put a stake on yet. So.
Okay.
But I think that even if vaccination were to become a thing in the US, and my impression is that it's not going to be anytime soon, I think it would also be kind of a sign of us saying, we can't manage this without vaccination. And so I think we're not there yet. I'm not saying it won't happen, but we're not there yet. I believe that the vaccines would likely be eligible for commercial poultry facilities, far above backyard flocks. So again, in Maine, we have one commercial by the definition of USDA. We have one commercial facility here in Maine. The breakdown goes a little bit more, because certainly, as you can imagine, there are plenty of people who, sell eggs at the farmer's market, or even out of a cooler at the end of the road, and they have a separate classification than someone who were to have, just a handful of birds that for their own pleasure or personal use. So there's kind of different breakdowns, but we have one commercial facility in Maine. So we've been in pretty constant contact with them. They're aware. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Fisk.
Sure. And I apologize for being late. The other half of my job with the animal welfare program was sneaking me away. I was doing preparation for court with a prosecutor, and I was like, their time is really, if there's any time that's more valuable than a veterinarian, I mean, these days it's probably our prosecutors. So courts are opening up. So our court cases are being heard, and if they need me to talk to them, I'm going to do it. But I apologize. I wasn't intending to offend your meeting and be late.
Oh, no need to apologize. We understand.
No, that's fine. Is there anything else you want to share, Rachel, of any other animal welfare related that you can? No, that's fine.
I don't think so, unless people have questions. I'm happy to answer them. We're kind of doing our best to drive on and get inspections done, get with animal health, we're still doing our best, of course, to do all of the other animal health things. So, rabies and other infectious diseases. So, Katie, you have your hand up.
I just had a question. I don't know. I know that there was at least one court possession hearing, perhaps, on the Wales cats, but I wasn't sure of the outcome of that.
So the show cause hearing, so the possession hearing for those cats was continued. That was actually the meeting that I was late to this one for. So that's been continued to next week. So hopefully we'll have a result for that after
next week. Okay.
Awesome. So the 26th,
okay.
That one's being heard. We may or may not have a decision that day. Sometimes we do. Sometimes the judge will issue a verbal decision at the end of the proceeding. And that's also to, fingers crossed that we get through the proceeding. So we've been given a whole morning, so fingers crossed we can do it, but it's 111 animals. So it's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, I think, is the subcommittee meetings, trying to organize those getting together.
So I know folks have been anxious to meet, and I apologize for us not being able to work on those. But I did, but as I've mentioned, and it's no excuse, but we're very, very short staffed right now. So I want to encourage groups to meet. I'm just not sure that we'll be able to supply a staff person to each of those subcommittee meetings. But what I can provide is we can provide you with a Teams link if folks are comfortable enough to use those. And my thought was that we can set up a meeting to work with each of the groups whenever they choose, and then they can have their discussion and then bring whatever they have, information they have back to share with AWAC. And I did check with our Attorney General's office, and it's fine for the subcommittees to meet on their own and bring back the information. So just so people are clear, I think that's always, we have to be careful about that, but I did check to make sure. So I can't remember, Garth, I know you were sort of spearheading, or maybe I'm just putting words in you.
I volunteered for both of them.
Oh, you
I think
did?
that's as
Oh,
far
good.
as
That makes it
went.
easy.
So I have a feeling I'll end up doing some of that.
So Garth, what might happen is I'll reach out to you after this meeting and just see what you might want to do, and we can
Okay.
help you with that.
That sounds good. And just to confirm, you did say meeting privately together is fine and not an issue. Okay.
Yep. No, I checked because I know that's always a concern, and I wanted
right.
to be sure. So I have an email from our Assistant Attorney General. So
Beautiful. Okay.
Covered.
And just to confirm, this is, we wanted to use, I have available WebEx and Microsoft Teams. We don't have to rely on the AWP.
Correct. Yes. Yes, Bonnie. If that works, that's fine too. Yeah, sure.
Great.
Or Zoom or whatever mechanism you're most comfortable with. Yeah, no, I was just offering that's something we can help facilitate. But if you've got another mechanism, go for it. That's fine. Sure.
We have, I've got Zoom, certainly able to offer that as well. If we do use a different platform, or if we use someone else's team, should we be recording those meetings and providing those to the department?
I think coming back with notes, because really all you're providing some feedback on your comments. That's what we're, that's the intention of this is just to have a smaller group sort of come up with this sort of the important points and then bring it back to AWAC. So I think that that's, in my mind, it's efficient. I don't think we're hiding any information. I think it's just, you're not making any policy decisions or anything. You're just providing us with feedback, and it's easier to do that in a smaller group, and then you bring that to the larger group, which is the public meeting. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, so I think with that in mind, if folks have an opportunity to meet, and we can share that information sort of at the next meeting potentially. So, yeah. Thanks.
Next on the agenda is meeting dates and topics. I know Ann and I have we talked about setting meeting dates for the entire year in advance, just so we have it on the calendar, if that works for everyone.
Yep.
Awesome. I know Ann had some proposed times.
Yeah, I have some proposed times, and so I must admit that I have a long awaited vacation period in the middle of May that I've been really needing for a while. So my suggestion was that we meet the first week of June, or the 6th through the 10th. And I just wanted to see if that works for folks. Whether there's any preference, or Casey, what day works for you with your schedule?
8th, 9th, or 10th works for me. I can't do Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay. Does Wednesday work? Wednesday afternoon work for folks? I mean, we can stick to that if that's if that keeps it clean for folks. Okay.
Yeah, that seems to work fine.
Yep.
And then the other, my understanding is that you usually have a summer break. Casey, is that correct? That you usually don't meet in the middle of the summer?
Yeah, in the past, I don't think we've met in the summer.
So we may have to hold a meeting, and I'll set that up if we are doing the RFP process. That maybe we'll just do a short meeting to deal with that. But if we can schedule the regular AWAC, larger meetings for, I thought of September the 12th through the 16th to avoid sort of Labor Day week. And then the next meeting was October 31st through the 4th. And if Wednesday afternoons seem to work, I could just put those out if that works for folks.
Yeah, Wednesdays generally work for me at 1, if everyone's okay with that.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think, Casey, you and I talked about, I'd love if folks have some ideas of agenda topics that they would like for us to consider going forward. I mean, obviously we'll get the information that the subcommittees will be bringing up regarding dog licensing and animal control officer resources, or increasing that. But are there any other sorts of topics that you'd just like us to be thinking about that would be, or would you like any sorts of sort of ongoing reports? Like I thought it was, Casey had requested that Dr. Fisk come and talk a little bit about, animal health and the veterinarian aspect of the work we do. But is there something else? Would you like to have a little bit of a feedback from the field, or something like that?
I am interested in how many complaints you get for welfare cases that come in, and then how many are pursued. That's something that I'm not sure I can find online anywhere. You may not be able to give us the details. I understand that, especially if it's a matter under investigation or litigation.
Right.
But just how many complaints are coming in, phone, email. I guess I'm even going further now. Do they relate to domestic animals, farm animals, wildlife? And are they? I'm always interested if they're being pursued, but I'm not sure what kind of information you are able to give us in that regard.
Right. And so I do know, like in the annual report that we put out, which, isn't timely, it's from 2021, but we do have, I think it was 287 cases were pursued, complaints to dispatched 287 complaints to humane agents. So we do collect that information, annually. I'll have to see if we can, what we can share, because you're right, we can share certain information, not if there's an ongoing investigation, but yeah, I'll tell you I get copied on all the complaints that come through, and there's a lot every day. It's just nonstop.
The 2021 report does have the number
Right.
of complaints.
But does it come in, and then how many are actually investigated? Because I'm interested in both, not just what was put out, but it'd be nice to get it in, on a monthly basis, and see if there's trends and things that we can think about as AWAC members.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Someone in the chat said perhaps a workshop on cruelty reporting and how that works.
On what? Sorry?
Cruelty reporting and how that works. Process for that. That might be useful.
So I'm not sure I understand the question. It's just how we get cruelty reports or,
I was just reading off their chat. It just says workshop on cruelty reporting and how the process, I guess. Oop.
That sounds like kind of a similar question as to what Bonnie just asked.
yeah.
Like how,
Well, I think it's a little different. I think what they might, it says workshop. I'm wondering if they're looking for some instruction on how to report cruelty cases. What information, who does it go to?
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's the word
Yeah.
workshop, that in my mind.
I think that kind of ties into what I would suggest is either a discussion on brainstorming on how to better achieve, or even just more information about what's happening currently around, marketing, for lack of a better term, how what the communications channels are, talking about, Help Fix Me funding on one hand, the license plate, how to report cruelty to the state, what sort of information is needed, what rises to the level, what doesn't, as well as, the puppy lemon laws. If you're purchasing a puppy from a breeder in the state, what should you be looking for? If something goes wrong, who do you let know? I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And certainly marketing's not going to solve all that, but putting out really good, important info might reach some folks who need it.
Okay. And we'll definitely need your advice as to what things to target, because that could be a huge undertaking, and it would be good to narrow it to certain and see how it goes, basically, and have a test case, if you will, with a topic. Yep.
Absolutely.
No, I think it's good. Yep. Okay. Great. That was helpful. Thank you. That's all I have, Casey, I think.
Next, we open up the public comment. If anyone has any questions or concerns from the public, this is the time to ask. Susan Hall has her hand raised.
So I just wanted to bring up the idea of grants for Help Fix Me. And I have to say, I really dislike the idea. And the reason I do is that what that does is it creates deserts in the areas where there isn't a go-getter person to go and manage a grant. If there's a centralized place like we had with Help Fix Me, or if a private group runs it as not necessarily a voucher program, but a centralized place where people can go and get funding, then I think that the areas that really need it can still get a hold of it. And then there wouldn't be also, I hate to put it this way, but there is a problem with, what if somebody running the program likes one organization and they don't like the other? So that person won't basically let the grants go to the organization they don't like. I just like it that it's kind of nonpartisan, in the hands of a group that just spreads it out around the state where it's needed. It isn't needed so much in the Portland area. But for example, right now, the areas that I deal with, they're all crying their eyes out because there aren't any more Help Fix Me vouchers for all the cats that they need help with. And I just got one more grant, but it's only enough to do one clinic. So anyway, that's my feeling about the grant. That's all. And the other thing is, I really wanted some definite answer on whether our current rules that we have that were written when Norman Waller was there, if those rules actually really do go out the window when an RFP is written. I'd like to know that for sure. I guess that's an Attorney General question. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more public comment? I don't see any. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.